Welcome back. In this section, we are going to secure our URL shortener application using Spring Security. So far, we do not have any concept of logged in user and anybody can access our application and then create a short URL as a guest and then see the list of public short URLs. Now we are going to configure our Spring Security in such a way that we can restrict some URLs like my URLs or admin dashboard only to be accessible by authenticated users. And also we are going to apply some role-based access control like admin dashboard should be accessible by users with role admin privilege only. Okay, so we are going to first explore what is the default behavior of a Spring Boot, Spring Security, and then we are going to learn how we can customize that. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go to Spring Initializer. Here earlier we have selected all the features and their corresponding starters. Now let us see what happens when I select security. So here we are using Spring Security. And if we explore, here we can see few starters added. One is Spring Boot Starter Security. Let's add it to our pom.xml. And also because we have added ThymeLeaf dependency already, it also add this one more dependency, ThymeLeaf extras Spring Security 6. So let's add this as well. And there is a Spring Security test dependency for writing test. Let us copy this as well. Okay, so these are all the dependencies we need. Next, once we have added this Spring Security starter, let us see how it behaves if you try to run the application. So we have not added any other configuration related to Spring Security. So we just added this dependency and then we just started our application. Now let us see how it's going to behave. Now I am trying to access home page and it automatically redirect me to a login page, which I have not implemented by myself. And you can see a simple login page here. So what is going on? To understand that, let us go and take a look at our console log. So here, when you start the application, here you can see this warning of using generated security password, some random thing, and this password generated password is for development use only, use your security configuration for production user, all this information. So what just happened is, when you simply add this Spring Security starter, it's going to secure all the URL patterns. Okay, so even if you go to home page, it is checking whether the user is already logged in or not. If it is not, it is going to redirect the user to login page. But we don't know like what are the credentials for users and how we are authenticating, where we are checking the user credentials. So we have not configured anything. So what Spring Boot's Spring Security auto configuration did, it will create a in-memory based user repository, a kind of thing, where the default username is user and the password is whatever is logged in the console. So this one. So now let us copy that and paste it here, sign in. So now we are able to successfully log in and then we are able to access the home page. Okay, so is there any way to customize this behavior? Yes, there is. But let us go a little bit slow because Spring Security is a little bit complex topics in my opinion. So let us slowly understand a step-by-step manner. Instead of generating using the generated credentials user and then some UUID value here, let us simply configure Spring Security user name. So the default one is user. Let us change it to, let's say, Siva. I just want to make my name. And then you can also configure the password Okay, so I'll leave it as a Siva only. Okay, now let me restart. So now you see, you don't see that auto generated UUID as a password thing. Now if I go back and try to access this, now I will provide Siva and Siva as my credentials, and I'm able to log in. Okay, nice. And in addition to username and password, you can also provide what are the roles for this particular user. Okay, now let us configure user. So you can leave only one role, or you can also assign multiple roles with a comma separated thing. Okay, let us include only user. Okay, for now, let us have user role only. Okay, so now that we have customized the credentials, so I know we are not talking to any database, we have users table and all that, but first let us understand. So for now, let us imagine we are having only one user with these credentials, and let us understand how we can work with it. Okay, so now, as I said, we can log in using these credentials that we just mentioned. The next thing I would like to change is here. By default, it is showing all these URLs, whether we log in or not. Earlier, we just display them. But let us change it to only show login and register if the user is not already logged in. If user logged in, show logout button. And also only show this my URLs for authenticated users only. And admin dashboard link should be visible for only the people not only logged in, but also having the admin role. Okay, so let us change that. In order to change that, let us, so all that navigation bar and everything is in our layout.html, right? So once we have added this TimeLeaf extras Spring Security 6, we can use a custom namespace security. So let us go ahead, and here I am adding this security extras slash Spring Security. So I can add this one additional namespace, and then I can use some features like here my URLs should be shown, this link should be shown only for authenticated users. So Spring Security, this, it is providing some features, various features like this. Here we can use security : authorize is authenticated. So what this will do, this is going to be rendered only if the current user is authenticated. Otherwise, it won't render. And similarly, we can also use security : authorize is anonymous. So there are things like this which are Spring expression language, where we can use this for checking related to security status. Okay, is anonymous means user is not yet authenticated, is authenticated means user logged in successfully. So we can also do the same for registration also. Okay, we'll show login and registration links only for guest users. But what about logged in users? We should show a logout button, right? So here we will show is authenticated only for the people, authenticated people, and also let us make it as a form submission. Okay, we don't need all the classes and everything. And instead of a anchor tag, let us put a button, type submit, and we can have logout. Okay, so here what we are doing, if the user is authenticated, we are having a small form and which is going to submit to /logout using method post, and we have a button to show logout thing. Okay, so with this change, What about the admin dashboard? We'll come back to it in a minute. And first, let us see how these are things going to be affected. So here again, I can log in with Siva. Here you can see, as I have already logged in, I can only see logout. And as I already logged in, it is showing this, but for this one, we have not yet configured anything. Statically, it is showing. Now let us change that as well. In addition to checking is authenticated, is anonymous, we can also check whether the current user has a specific role or not. So IntelliJ is showing this auto completion. Here I can check, does the user has this role? If yes, then only show this link, otherwise don't show it. So right now we have configured the only user we have with user role only, which means Siva user does not have admin role. So it is not going to show this dashboard. So let us check that as well. As you can see, only my URLs is being shown, not admin dashboard. How about adding that additional role as well? So here, let me add admin role also for the user, and I'm going to restart this. So this is a static data that we are configuring just to make you understand the concept. Obviously, this is not how we are going to configure our users information. Eventually, we are going to talk to the database and then compare the credentials and all. But for now, let's understand how our, showing only role-based controls on UI and all that. Okay, now this user has both user and admin. Okay. So here you can see, as the user Siva has both admin and authenticated, we are able to see both the links here. Okay, that is also nice. But first let us understand how Spring Security works, right? So if you take a look at, usually in our application, we may have various pages, and we usually access them using GET request, or if you have a form, you are going to submit to some URL, and also you may access some admin related pages and all that. And you will have Spring controllers to handle those URLs and render some web page and all that. So this is like, for each action, there is an action handler. But what about some cross-cutting concerns? Cross-cutting concern in the sense, if you want to apply security, one approach is, in every handler you can check, whether the current user access this handler is authenticated or not. You can put that check in everywhere. Or a better approach would be to have a thing called filter. So if you know Java web development in the olden days, there are servlets and then there are filters. So servlets in the modern Spring world, you can assume it as a controller, okay? And a filter is nothing but same filter, in which you can configure a filter in such a way that for all these URLs, before handing over the control to these handler methods, let them go through this filter, where we can write some logic to check whether the current user is authenticated or not. If authenticated, then only let them proceed to handle this. Otherwise, maybe redirect to a login page. Okay, so that is the kind of logic we usually put in our security filters. So how can we configure that? In our application, there can be some pages which can be accessible by guest users who are not yet authenticated, and there can be some URLs that are only accessible by authenticated users. And then again, there are some pages like admin dashboard. Not only you need to be authenticated, you also need to have a role admin. Okay, so if these criteria matches only, you will the security filter will allow you to proceed to handle this logic. Otherwise, it's going to redirect you to either, okay, you have not authenticated yourself, so first login. Otherwise, you already logged in, but you only have the role user, you do not have a role admin. So in case some single user try to access admin dashboard, it can redirect to a page called, okay, forbidden, you are authenticated, but you do not have a role admin. So all these checks will be performed in this filter, and Spring Security provides such filter where we can customize, okay, get short URLs is a public URL. For that, users need not be authenticated. Any guest users can also access. But right now, we are not even be able to access homepage also, because that is how Spring Security default configuration is configured. Okay, all the pages are locked down, and only after you authenticate yourself, then only you can access. That is the default configuration. Of course, that is not how we want to have our URL shortener application. We should be able to go to home page and see the home page with create a short URL form, and then we can see this public list of short URLs and all that. So for a root page, we don't need to be accessible. Now, how do we customize that? That is where we are going to create our own Spring Security configuration class, and then specify, okay, for these URLs, permit everyone. For these URLs, user should be authenticated. For these URLs, user should have admin role. So that is what we are going to do next. To customize default Spring Security, we need to create a custom web security configuration. So here in our URL shortener application, I'm going to create a package called config. Now I'm going to paste the default customized web security configuration, and I'm going to walk you through what we are doing here. So here, this is the security filter chain bean that we need to register in order to customize our Spring Security default configuration. So we have created a class, a configuration class, and to indicate to Spring Framework that this is a configuration class, we have added this at configuration. And also, as we are going to customize, we need to add this at enable web security. And then we have defined a bean for password encoder. In our case, we are going to use BCrypt password encoder, which is a most widely used one. We register it as a bean. And also, now we are configuring a Spring Security filter chain bean. And this is where we are going to customize all our security related things. So let us walk through it. So first we are disabling this CSRF configuration, but I'll talk about what this CSRF is. We'll talk about it a little bit later. For now, I'm just disabling it. And then here we are configuring, okay, what URLs can be accessible for guests, what URLs we need to be protected and all that. So here, if we take a look at it, we are using authorize HTTP request, and we are passing a lambda where we are saying request matches and specified a number of paths, URL paths. So if it is /URL or any request to web jars or any request to CSS files, JS files, images, and to the root homepage or short URLs. So these are all the things that user should be able to access without having to log in. So we mentioned all those paths, and then using this .permit all, which means anybody can access it. And then we are configuring my URLs. This path should be accessible only for authenticated users. And then we are saying /admin/, so it can be /admin dashboard or anything that starts with /admin should be accessible by users who has role admin. Okay. And finally, we are saying we have already configured for most of the known URLs. Otherwise, if any other request, they should be authenticated. So one thing to remember is whenever we try to access any URL, it is going to start checking from top to bottom, which means if you put something at the top and then permit it, for example, if you put /admin is accessible publicly, it is not going to come down and then check here and okay, it needs authenticated user with this role. So it is going to check from top to bottom. So you need to put more specific URLs at the top and then broaden the priority to the bottom. So one more thing to remember is always ensure that all the URLs are locked down and only selectively enable whatever you want to make it publicly available, and then you can specifically secure some URLs for so and so. Authenticated users only are for users with specific role. So you should ensure that all the URLs are protected. Only enable the public URLs as permit all. Okay, don't just enable access for all the unknown URLs. And then we are customizing another thing as form login. So here we have seen Spring Security by default generates a simple login form, but obviously we want to create our own custom form. Usually that should align with the overall our application UI. It is not simple two-field bare minimum login page, right? So in that case, we can say, okay, this is the login page URL. So if somebody tries to access any secured page, our Spring Security configuration is going to redirect the user to this URL, and we need to write a handler for it. And then once user is successfully logged in, they are going to be redirected to /page, which is home page, and this is accessible for everyone. And then there is a logout. Again, logout URL is this, and once successfully logged out, we are redirecting the user to login page, and also we are passing this extra parameter logout. Okay, and logout is also permit all. So finally, we are, after configuring everything on this HTTP security object, we are building the final security filter chain. So this is everything we need to have for our application. In addition to that, if you remember, we have configured our users with password in plain text. Obviously, this is not a good idea, and we should have a encoded text so that we can configure. Okay, so let us do one thing. In our test, let us create a simple password utility. And create a main method, password encoder, BCrypt encoder, and then just print encoder dot encode of secret and also admin. Okay, so what we are doing, we are just encoding two plain text values. One is a secret, another one is admin. So let us simply run this. So what we can do, let us create a migration script of third one, v3 __ update user passwords .sql, update users set password equals to, so this is for Siva, where email equals to what of the email we have, and another one, this is for admin. Okay, now let us go ahead. Okay, so let me switch it. So now we have our third flyway migration script where we are changing it to respective BCrypt encoded values for the same values. Admin password is admin, Siva password is secret, but we are just changing that plain text into BCrypt encoded format. Okay, so this is fine. But how Spring Security knows to read the data, users information from users table? So far, we have not configured anything, right? So this is where we need to configure another thing called user details service. So let us do that next. So Spring Security provides an interface called user details service, which we need to implement in such a way that we can query our database and then return the user information. So let us do that. So here in our services, I'm going to create a class called security user details service, and I'm going to implement user details service interface from Spring Security. Okay, now I'm going to make it as a service, Spring service, and implement the method load user by username. So this is one method we need to implement. So in this method, you can implement whatever the logic. You talk to database or you talk to MongoDB. So whatever mechanism you can implement to load a user details information, you can do that. So obviously we are going to talk to our users table and get user details information by using this username. If you remember, in our case, our email is going to act as the username. We do not have a username field. If we take a look at the tables, we are going to use our email as the username. So we are going to, let's close this. So we are going to use this username as email. Okay. So first, let us go ahead and create our repository for users. I remember mentioning that we are going to use JDBC client instead of spring-data-jpa for user-related operations. But first, I'm going to use spring-data-jpa for this user repository also, and then I'm going to convert that into JDBC client. So it's not that complex. So here I'm going to create a class called user repository. And again, I can directly use IntelliJ feature to generate it. I can create a spring-data-jpa repository for the entity user. Okay. Yes, it is generated fine. And now I'm going to implement a method to look up optional of user find by email. Okay, I want to get a user information for the given email. Okay, so here it is implemented. Now I can go ahead and inject that user repository, final user repository. Okay. Now I can use user repository dot find by email and pass the username, which is nothing but email. And if it not finding a record with the given username, we should throw or else throw user not found exception. So if you take a look at this user detail service, the contract is you should be able to return an instance of user details. If you cannot find a user with a given username, throw this one. So instead of throwing other things, we should throw this exception so that Spring Security handles accordingly what to do when a username not found exception is thrown. Okay, so this is fine. And now we have our user instance. Now we need to return an instance of user details. This is again from Spring Security Framework. And also there is an implementation provided by Spring Framework itself called user. Okay, so now we can use the same thing, or we can create our own implementation as well. But let's go ahead and use what Spring is already provided. So here you can see, because we have already imported our own user class here, it is embedding the complete fully qualified name for user Spring Security's user. And here we need to provide some details like user.getEmail as the username. So if you take a look at it, it provides some options we can provide the username, password, and a list of granted authorities. So we have provided email as username and password as password. And here we can pass a list of new. So we are creating a list of simple granted authority, and the role name we need to pass. So user role dot name. It should be in the format of role underscore whatever the name we have for the enum. Okay. So this is all we need to have for our Spring Security user details implementation. And here is the thing. If you register a Spring Bean which implements this interface, you don't need to explicitly configure that in Web Security Configure. Spring Security automatically picks up the implementation of this interface, which is nothing but our security user detail service. So we are almost done. Only thing that is remaining is we need to create our login.html page. So let me create that. So here in the templates, I'm creating a new file called login.html, and it's a plain time-leaf template just like any other thing. So here again I'm using layout, and we have a simple form here. Okay, and it has fields. By default it should have the name field name as username, though we are giving email as our username and password. So these are the default parameters that expects when you are using form based login. The field name supposed to be username and password. Okay, here we are having a couple of other things. We are trying to show if there is any error when you try to log in. If the credentials are invalid, it is going to redisplay the same login form with the parameter error, which means question mark error. And then we are going to show invalid username and our password. And also when we try to log in, we are going to append the parameter logout. So in that case, we can show you have been logged out. Okay. So this is a simple login form. And one last thing that we need to do is we need to handle this. Let's check here. We are saying a login page should be accessible when user access /login, right? So we need to implement that. So let's go to our controller and create a single get mapping for login. Okay, string login form return login. So if you remember, we are not using the typical time leaf support of redisplaying the username and password. No, we are not using any of those features, because usually you don't see login form redisplaying the entered username and password, maybe for better security. So we are not using the timely features where we redisplay the details. It's a plain form, HTML form. So we have our controller as well. When we access /login, it's going to render this login page. So we have everything configured, and we should be able to restart our application and access it. So application started successfully. Now I'm going to access it. Yes, we are able to see our home page without logging in. And then if I try to log in, okay, let us check in the login. Do we have login links? So, okay, so we have not actually included the links here. So let us update this href2 / my URLs, and this is th:/href /admin/dashboard. In the similar way, we can update login. Let me copy it. So here this is a register. Okay, so that's all we need to update. Let us restart. Okay, now if I click on login, it is showing this login page. Here now, okay, one another thing, I think we can remove this. We don't need this anymore, because we are now actually talking to the database and then checking the credentials. So here again, let me go back to login page. Login with admin credentials. Username is nothing but email and password is also admin. So I'm able to log in and I can see both my URLs and admin dashboard. Now let me log out and log in with Siva user. Siva at gmail.com. Now login. So let me check, is it Siva at gmail.com? Secret. Okay, so here I will log in with Siva at Gmail and secret. Okay, so here you can see only this, not admin dashboard, because Siva user does not have role admin. Okay, so our security configuration is working fine. So finally, let us see how we can get the current user information in two ways. One is I would like to show here the current logged in user email, and also in the background how we can get programmatically the current user logged in user information. Okay, so let's implement those two things. So here we have already used some security expressions like authorize and check is anonymous or is authenticated, like that, right? So similarly, we can also use this expression of security colon authentication and then print the name, which is nothing but our user's email. Okay, so here we are also checking only display this if user is authenticated. Okay, so let us see what this will do. Okay, here, so in our application, if you see, we are not yet authenticated and we are not seeing anything here, and then I'm logging in with admin at gmail.com admin, and now you can see welcome, so on so. Okay, so this is how we can print the login information using security authentication expression. Okay, you can also print roles as well. Okay, this is how we can render logged in user information in the UI. And let us see how we can get current logged in user information in the backend code. So here in controllers itself, let me create a security utils class. Security utils class. Okay, let me make it as a service or component, anything works. So here I'm going to implement a method public return the current user information. This user is from our domain entities. Okay, so get current user. So how we can implement that? We can call security context holder dot get context dot get authentication. This is going to return the current authentication information. If the user is not authenticated, it is going to return null, and we can also check if it is not null. Okay, and authentication dot is authenticated is going to be true only if user is authenticated, and then we can get authentication dot get name, which is nothing but our email. So once we have this, we can inject private final user repository. Okay, and inject that. Here we can look up the username, user repository, find by email or return null. Okay, so let us access this from our controller. Okay, here in the home page, Let's inject this security utils dot get current user. Okay, right now we are not going to do anything, just we are going to put a debug point here and then see what value we are going to get here. Okay, let me restart the application and go to our home page. Let me log out. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to the home page, and here you can see current user is null because current user is not authenticated yet. So let me proceed and log in with admin credentials. Admin. Now current user information is admin details you can see here. Okay, so this is how we can get the current authenticated user information like this from security context folder. Okay, so I think we have covered all the things we planned for this section. We know we have updated users password with BCrypt encoder password values, and then we used how by default Spring Security is going to show default login page, and we have customized with our own login page, and then we have conditionally rendered the links to login, register, logout based on the user logged in or not. And also we have conditionally shown this link to admin dashboard based on whether the current user has a role admin or not. And also we have seen how we can get the current login user information both in the TimeLeaf templates and in the backend code. So I think you have a decent idea on how to use Spring Security to protect your web application. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.